After 20 years of building together through dust, deadlines, and damn good ideas, Pace and Adam invite you to join them for honest conversations about the home building world. Welcome to Build Connected, where experience meets insight, powered by Diamond Home Restoration.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Build Connected. I am Pace.
And I'm Adam.
You are sick. You're feeling a little bit under the weather. It's just coming on right now. Are you up to this?
I am. Look, I'm still smiling.
That's good. That's a good
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah. I'm drinking my emergency packets. You know, my wife is a nurse, and it's not really the best scenario when you're sick and your wife is a nurse because she's seen so many bad things happen in the hospital that when I get sick, it's like, suck it up, drink water. Oh, you're not drinking water? Well, that's the problem right there. Drink more water. I don't want to hear it. So I don't get no love.
No. Well, the through line is you're the problem. Yeah, that makes sense. But you are pushing through, and today we're going to do something special. It's going to be a break from our traditional format. We're only going to talk about the pre-construction process. And why is that, Adam?
You know, well, first of all, it's near and dear to our heart. We're passionate about it because we've seen how it impacts our clients and how it impacts our business, right? It's a process that makes sense. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that are approaching a remodel and they are not aware of this. And they're back in the old school mentality of getting plans, permits, and going out to multiple bids, which is the wrong way to go about it. Let's go ahead. Let's paint the picture of the old school mentality of getting a bid for your project. Walk me through it, Pace.
Well, the old school mentality, I don't like that.
Why not?
Because it's not really the old school. It's the
still-
middle school. Like I've said before, like architecture class tells you to go out and get pricing when you start the process. It's part of every textbook an architect learned. It's at the early stages. It's at stage 2, you start getting pricing. But that went away.
It went away.
I don't know why it went away, but it went away. Like, I'm not saying that nobody does it, but nobody that we're working with does it. So that's the old school. But I also think that as building becomes more complicated, the time to estimate becomes more time consuming, right? And the end result of that, as the code builds and things become more complex, right? Our free time as contractors continues to rise, right? And so not only are we giving up free time, but the number that we're generating is so different from the design number that we're giving up free time for something that you can't even do. It's two things, right?
Completely. It doesn't make sense anymore. And I mean, it never really made sense, but it was the way we did it, right? We did it for so many years. And when you have a client that is looking to do a remodeling project and they don't have a contractor that is there in the very beginning of that process, helping them put real-time pricing to initial design schematics, you know, it's hurting them. I mean, you use an analogy, right? It's like being in a fight with one arm tied behind your back. You can't.
That's right. You're giving up a tool, right? That tool is so useful in informing the design process, right? It's every step of the way. What does this do to our budget? What if we push the roof out in this direction? What if we add a bedroom in this direction, right? What if we choose this finish in this area? What is that doing to the price? Without that information, how do you make a decision? Does it make sense to have this pie in the sky design approach where you just ask the question, what do you want? Like you strip away any constraints of price, right? In this whole phase, and you just say, what do you want? And you just dream, and you pay somebody to put these dreams on paper without an associated price. But then you say, okay, we're done with that. Now let's go out and let's ask people to give us a price, and let's make a decision, right, based on the price they provide. Oh, Wait, all of them are too expensive. Like now we've
Not
got
only
this,
not only are all of them too expensive, but all of them are vastly different numbers, right?
right.
You've got different contractors that have different means and methods of pricing these plans, and you can't even compare apples to apples. I mean, one bid set could be off by $85,000. Depends on the size of the job, whatever. It could be vastly different from the other bid set just because of allowance items alone. And for those of you that are listening to this, the just to clarify, and I'm sure many of you know this, those allowance items are ultimately selections that you make. You drive that cost up or down. Those allowance items are there in place as a realistic placeholder. Some contractors will put a low ball number in that doesn't even make any sense, that covers, barely your plumbing fixtures, whereas another contractor might put in extremely high end fixtures, and that could sway the estimates completely one way or the other. So, it doesn't make sense to look at a majority of estimates because you're never going to really be able to compare. You're going to have to make a leap of faith at some point and pick a contractor that you trust, that maybe has worked for your friends before. You've, word of mouth, and that their pricing is reasonable. And if you can get yourself to that point, you want to bring those contractors on board at the very initial design stage.
Yeah, I think the flip side of what you're saying too with the allowances is very important. Like the answer to that is not, oh, well, let's eliminate that guesswork in the design phase. Let's, instead of making the contractor guess and plug in an allowance, let's make every selection in the design phase without pricing, right? That is not the answer, right? Because the number is just gonna go up. And without the real-time pricing of it, you can't make an informed decision. So what you're saying is true. And I think what a lot of architects do to answer that is also untrue, right? There's a problem with going out for multiple bids and everybody plugging in a different allowance. But there's also a problem with doing more design work without the information of what the price is that goes along with it.
Right. I mean, look, we talk about how this subject is near and dear to our heart because it's just common sense. I mean, do you want to spend all this money on plans and then get multiple bids and find out that you can't even afford the project? Or do you want to bring somebody on board that you trust, at least you think you trust, but this pre-construction process, by the time they get to the end of it, you're going to know for sure, which is the other benefit of the pre-construction process, right? But do you want to spend a little money, pay these contractors for their time? And look, you're either paying them by the hour, or they might have a fixed fee for their pre-construction service, but ultimately it's going to save you a bunch of money in the end, or save you the heartache from bagging the project altogether. So it's just it's the only thing that makes sense. And I think once, it was hard for you and I to start this process. I think we've been doing our pre-construction process for 5 or 6 years now, right? Like when we kicked it off, like we understood that it made sense. And you don't know if clients are gonna want to pay the money, right, to go through the pre-construction process. But once you start talking about it, gosh, it's like, light bulbs go off, and it makes so much sense to us, and it's easy to talk about. And then the person that's listening on the other side, they have the same reaction. And so I talked about the other benefits of our pre-construction process, which is really getting to know the client and the client getting to know you, right? It's about them getting value, and the contractor is providing that value through this process. And whether or not you choose to hire that contractor for the construction phase is up to you. I mean, ultimately, that's why we're in this together, right? We're in this phase because we want to ultimately work on that remodel together. But look, the truth is, as a client, you might get to the end of pre-construction and realize, wow, these contractors are, even though at the end of this process, I have a design that I can afford, they really weren't doing what they said they would do. They told me they would have numbers in a week, and it took 3 weeks, and, so on and so forth. And then from the contractor standpoint, right, we might be working with a client through this pre-construction phase and realize like they're really hard to work with, and maybe they're not a fit for us on the construction phase. And look, the truth is we've been doing this for, like I said, 5 or 6 years. It's happened one time where we realized we weren't a fit. But the truth is that at the end of the process, they had a design that they could afford to build. So everybody's happy, right? Everybody wins. And the point of pre-construction is a multi-pronged approach, right? It's the ability to provide real-time pricing for the design that you want. It enables the project to go smoothly because you know what to expect. And then the project ends in a nice way. I mean, our business is only as good as the way our project finishes, right? If we have projects that don't finish well, nobody's going to recommend us and we're going to be none. So, it's like a domino effect.
Yeah, 100%. Two things came to mind while you were saying all of those great points. The first one, and this I've never thought of this before, so it's not fully formed, but just hear me out. Imagine if you were going to target practice, right? You had a let's just say you had a dart gun, right? And you're practicing
A dart gun?
a gun, right?
Blow dart? Blow darts?
You're going target practicing,
Ooh.
right? You would never target practice without a target, right? If your goal is to get to become a better shooter, you wouldn't practice without a target. And then one day, like in order to say compete, you throw up a target and you say, oh, I've done really poorly or I've done really good, right? While you're practicing, there's a target up. So your first shot, you can see how far off target you are. And then you slowly correct. And that's what your practice is. Pre-construction in this case is the target, right? It's the ability to put a price to the design and see how far off base you are to the budget. You can't do that without the target. In this case, we are the target. The real-time pricing is the target. So it just, like you said, it makes perfect sense to do it this way. And how we ever got away from it is a mystery to me. But the other thing that you mentioned,
You keep thinking about that. In case any of you don't know Pace that well, you should know that he is an analogy guy. And, look, your analogies are typically pretty good, but that one, I'm going to give that a 10 out of 10. That was a solid analogy. Props to you, Pace.
thanks. The other the other thing that you mentioned, you're right. Even if you part ways, right, with the contractor that has brought you through that pre-construction process, there's so much value added. It's not about the relationship and do you move forward. It's just that you've now got a buildable set of plans. Um, and maybe even more importantly, what that real-time pricing does, as a homeowner, you are getting information, price, but you're also seeing how different things on the project tie together. Let me give you an example. You say that, oh, I want to replace the floors. Say we're doing a remodel and you say, I want to replace the floors. It's not only the cost of the floors, right? It's oh, I've got to maybe change my doors, right? If it's a different floor thickness. I've got to remove all of my baseboard, right? You can start to see how things within the house tie together and how cost is not one specific line item. It can oftentimes touch multiple items. And I think somehow that is where this built-in pricing that designers do may get lost because it becomes very one-dimensional. You can say, oh, you know, floor is only this much per square foot. And there's a lot lost in all the associated items. But if you can talk through that in the early stages, I think it's so informative to the homeowners. So it's not just, okay, that floor costs that much. You can start to see how everything in your house ties together.
Yeah, I mean, the clients really get to understand the process of the construction of their home and the remodeling that takes place, right? Because we're evaluating these items. I mean, typically when we start this process, there's not a lot of contractors doing the pre-construction. I think it's starting to catch on a little bit. But the way our process works is, right, we generally have like two rounds of pricing, and it starts with a broad brushstroke schematic, and then we'll do, a full estimate. And that estimate is usually like an all-inclusive thing. Like it's all their hopes and dreams, and that number 9 times out of 10 is well over their budget. And then that's where we use the term value engineering, right? Where you and I, Pace, we take the time to think through the things that are most important to them, and where does it make sense to remove some maybe high ticket items that can really shave that price down. And that conversation happens between you and I first, but then we have that discussion with the client, and we get into kind of a little bit more of the minutia, like what you're talking about. Like, hey, here's why this line item is expensive. Your flooring line is expensive because we got to remove the baseboard. We got to take all the doors off, cut all the doors down, so people can have some perspective. A lot of times people just see numbers and they're like, wow, that number is high. That doesn't make sense to me. Why is that so high? So you get to learn a little bit as a client too about what's going on in the project, and I think that's super important. And you get to learn about your contractor, and it's a process that is valuable and makes so much sense.
I think it enriches the process. I think as a homeowner, you have just such a better understanding of what it takes to do the project. So you're making better decisions. You have a pretty much a guaranteed result that your design is going to match your budget at the end, right? Meaning you've got a buildable project and you just understand the things going into your house. And I think as a homeowner, I think that just there's a comfort in that, right? You understand the way things are constructed much more so than when you're not actively involved in making these decisions. Um, I mean, I think it just touches on so many levels throughout the project.
No doubt. This next topic that I just want to talk about real quick, it might be a little bit too off topic, and stop me if you think it is, Pace. But recently we had a conversation with someone who wanted to hire a contractor, and they went through a design build firm, right? And I think they were expecting this process to be unique in its own way because it's like a one-stop shop, right? Oh, they're a design build firm. They have in-house architects, engineers, designers, and there are a lot of great firms that offer all those services. But I think part of the service that they were not getting was really that kind of real-time pricing. I think there's a lot of design build firms that do offer that pre-construction process, but I think in this scenario, they initially went in that direction because they saw value in a design build one stop shop firm. But the truth is, there's other builders like us, right? I mean, we consider ourselves a design build firm, but we don't have in-house architects and in-house engineers. But we're able to, outsource through our experience with other with other architects, designers, engineers, and really have the same outcome, if not better, because we are going through this kind of pre-construction process, no matter who we're pulling into the mix. Does that make sense? Or am I getting too off topic here?
Yeah, in particular, I mean, I think what you're referring to, it's 20 plus years of a design team that we work hand in hand with. So even though they're not in house, right, they're family to us, and so that process is seamless. But you're right. I mean, this little side journey here is totally relevant. If you select a design build firm, like one of the biggest selling points of a design build firm is that built in real time pricing. And if you don't get that, that design build company is doing something really, really wrong. All right. Well, I have one other side note that I want to mention because today's the 1 year anniversary of the fires in Southern California. And just listening to some news coverage on it, it's just shocking to me. And I mean it's not unexpected, but 1 year out, all those houses lost. There has been one house built. And I mean, my question to you, Adam, like if you and I lived there and we lost our houses, could we build a new house in a year?
100%.
100%. Do you think there's a vast, vast majority of people in that area who are ready, know what they want to build?
Probably the majority of them.
probably the majority, right? And so, it's a different episode, but this directly ties into the regulation, right? We're going to have this. We'll have another special episode on this. Um, and this is with all of the green lighting, all the fast tracking that has been, people have paid lip service to, government officials have paid lip service to. We are going to remove all the obstacles so people can get back in their homes. 1 year later, there's one house built. That is not okay.
Yeah, let's there's lots to talk about regarding regulation and what's going on over there for sure, and we'll come back to that. If you've made it to the end of this episode, if there's something you can take away from this and you're looking to do a remodeling project, bring on that contractor right away before that design pen hits the paper. It's so important. Even if you have a contractor that doesn't do pre-construction, but you really love them and you want them to do the work, pay them for their time to go through that process with you, because it will save you in the end.
That money that you spend will be the best money you spend on the project. It will save you money in the long run. That's a guarantee.
Yeah. Well, I think that covers today's topic. We got in depth on a passionate thing that we talk about daily. So thank you everybody for listening. And until next time, I'm Adam.
And on pace.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us on Build Connected. For more stories, insights, and ideas, visit diamondhomerestoration.com or find us on Instagram and LinkedIn. We'll be back next week. We hope you will too.